Welcome to Howard Brown Barber and Beauty Institute. Today, we are doing the review for infection control, principles, and practices. Let's begin. What term refers to the ability to produce an effect? Efficacy, disinfection, motility, sterilization. If you chose A, efficacy, you are correct. What term indicates that a product is capable of destroying bacteria? Bacteriophobic, bacterial, probacterial, bactericidal. If you chose D, bactericidal, you are correct. What term refers to a resistance to disease that is partly inherited and partly developed through healthy living? Natural immunity, physical immunity, acquired immunity, healthy immunity. If you chose A, natural immunity, you are correct. What is scabies? Blood-borne virus that causes disease, type of fungus that affects plants or grows on inanimate objects, superficial fungal infection that commonly affects the skin, contagious disease caused by the itch mite. If you chose D, contagious disease caused by the itch mite, you are correct. What does the term porous mean? Made or constructed of a material that does not have openings. Made or constructed of a material that has openings. Susceptible to disease. Immune to a disease. If you chose B, made or constructed of a material that has openings, you are correct. What are bacilli? Round-shaped bacteria, spherical bacteria that grow in pairs, spiral or corkscrew-shaped bacteria, short rod-shaped bacteria. If you chose D, short rod-shaped bacteria, you are correct. What are staphylococci? Pus-forming bacterial that grow in clusters like a bunch of grapes. Spiral or corkscrew-shaped bacteria that cause diseases such as syphilis. Microscopic plant parasites including molds and mildews. Slender, hair-like extensions used by parasites for locomotion. If you chose A, pus-forming bacteria that grow in clusters like a bunch of grapes, you are correct. What are flagella? Microscopic plant parasites, including molds and mildews. Pus-forming bacteria that grow in clusters like a bunch of grapes. Slender, hair-like extensions used by parasites for locomotion. Spiral or corkscrew-shaped bacteria that cause diseases such as syphilis. If you chose C, slender, hair-like extensions used by parasites for locomotion, What is a microscopic germ that normally exists in tap water in small numbers? Diplococci, Mycobacterium fortuitum, human immunodeficiency virus, mildew. If you chose B, Mycobacterium fortuitum, you are correct. What is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus? Superficial fungal infection that commonly affects the skin, microscopic germ that normally exists in tap water, pus-forming bacteria that grow in clusters like bunches of grapes. Type of infectious bacteria that is highly resistant to antibiotics. If you chose D, type of infectious bacteria that is highly resistant to antibiotics, you are correct. What is a responsibility of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA? Testing and approving drugs sold and used in the United States, overseeing all agricultural practices of U.S. farmers, supervising employee safety in U.S. workplaces, registering all types of disinfectant sold and used in the United States. If you chose D, registering all types of disinfectant sold and used in the United States, you are correct. What happened in 1985 that triggered the creation of universal precautions? Bird flu pandemic, AIDS public health crisis, hepatitis pandemic, evidence of the return of the bubonic plague. If you chose B, AIDS public health crisis, you are correct. What is a responsibility of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC? Reviewing and approving pharmaceutical products, testing and licensing medical professionals, testing and approving preparation techniques for food products, studying diseases and providing guidance to prevent their spread. If you chose D, studying diseases and providing guidance to prevent their spread, you are correct. What set of practices replaced universal precautions in 1996? Standard precautions, global precautions, standard procedures, global procedures. If you chose A, standard precautions, you are correct. When should an adhesive bandage be used? After breaking a pimple, in response to an exposure incident, prior to a dermabrasion treatment, during tweezing to aid hair removal. If you chose B, in response to an exposure incident, you are correct. What is true of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR? It should only be performed by licensed medical professionals. It is a basic element of first aid every esthetician should know. Only the salon manager is authorized to perform CPR. You should only perform CPR if a client gives you verbal permission. If you chose B, it is a basic element of first aid every esthetician should know. You are correct. When should you call emergency medical technicians, EMTs? Only if it appears that someone in the salon is in mortal danger, as soon as possible after any significant accident has occurred, only after you have exhausted your knowledge of first aid techniques, after the worst results of an accident have been addressed. If you chose B, as soon as possible after any significant accident has occurred, you are correct. How many levels of burns are there? 3, 4, 6, 8. If you chose B, 4, you are correct. What is a fluid created by infection? Mold, mildew, lymph, pus. If you chose D, pus, you are correct. What is the term for illness related to conditions associated with employment? Employment disorder, employment disease, occupational disorder, occupational disease. If you chose D, occupational disease, you are correct. What part of the body does tinea pedis affect? Hands, knees, elbows, feet. If you chose D, feet, you are correct. What disease is caused by bacteria transmitted through coughing or sneezing? Tuberculosis, AIDS, hepatitis, diabetes. If you chose A, tuberculosis, you are correct. What is the term for any organism of microscopic or submicroscopic size? Mini-organism, suborganism, microorganism, quasi-organism. If you chose C, microorganism, you are correct. What is the body fluid or secretion to which standard precautions do not apply? Blood, saliva, pus, sweat. If you chose D, sweat, you are correct. When should you apply a mask, eyewear, or gown according to standard precautions? Whenever you come in contact with the human body, if the splashing of body fluids is likely, if the splashing of treatment products is likely, whenever you come in contact with a pregnant client. If you chose B, if the splashing of body fluids is likely, you are correct. What should you do first when responding to an exposure incident? Call an ambulance, disinfect your hands, stop the bleeding, stop the service. If you chose D, stop the service, you are correct. When in the process of responding to an exposure incident, should you recommend that the client see a physician if symptoms develop? At the beginning of the process, in the middle of the process, at the end of the process, several times throughout the process. If you chose C, at the end of the process, you are correct. What term refers to disease-causing microorganisms carried in the body by blood? Bloodstream invaders, bloodstream pathogens, blood-borne invaders, blood-borne pathogens. If you chose D, blood-borne pathogens, you are correct. What is infection control? Wearing protective gear at all times in the salon, methods used to eliminate or reduce transmission of infectious organisms, methods that ensure absolutely no infections, organisms enter the salon, step-by-step instructions for performing medical aesthetic treatments. If you chose B, methods used to eliminate or reduce transmission of infectious organisms, you are correct. What term refers to the process for properly handling sterilized and disinfected equipment and supplies to reduce contamination? Infection control, infection procedures, aseptic control, aseptic procedures. If you chose D, aseptic procedures, you are correct. What is the difference between rules and laws? Laws are more specific than rules. You are not expected to obey rules. Each salon makes up its own rules. Rules are more specific than laws. If you chose D, rules are more specific than laws, you are correct. Which organization regulates and enforces safety standards to protect employees at work? Food and Drug Administration, FDA, United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. If you chose D, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, you are correct. What can you find on Material Safety Data Sheets, MSDSs? Lists of companies that sell the specified product, information about possible hazards and safe use of products, product pricing information, comparison charts describing efficacy of similar products. If you chose B, information about possible hazards and safe use of products, you are correct. What must every employee in the salon do after reading each MSDS that comes into the salon? Verify having read the MSDS, memorize the entire MSDS, write a report on the MSDS, copy the MSDS by hand. If you chose A, verify having read the MSDS, you are correct. What part of the body is most often affected by folliculitis? Eyebrows, bridge of the nose, armpits, bearded areas of the face. If you chose D, bearded areas of the face, you are. What term indicates that a product is capable of destroying viruses? Antibacterial, neutroviral, virucidal, virophobic. If you chose C, virucidal, you are correct. What term indicates that a person shows no signs or symptoms of infection? Asymptomatic, anti-symptomatic, symptomatic, non-symptomatic. If you chose A, asymptomatic, you are correct. What term refers to a reaction caused by extreme sensitivity to a normally harmless substance? Analogy, infection, allergy, contagion. If you chose C, allergy, you are correct. What is the term for the number of viable organisms in or on an object or surface? What term indicates that a product is capable of destroying viruses? Is it antibacterial, neutral viral, virucidal, virophobic? If you chose C, virucidal, you are correct. What term indicates that a person shows no signs or symptoms of infection? Asymptomatic, anti-symptomatic, symptomatic, non-symptomatic. If you chose A, asymptomatic, you are correct. What term refers to a reaction caused by extreme sensitivity to a normally harmless substance? Analogy, infection, allergy, contagion. If you chose C, allergy, you are correct. What is the term for the number of viable organisms in or on an object or surface? Bioload, bioburden, viable load, viable burden. If you chose B, bioburden, you are correct. What is true of touching? Touching is harmless since infection cannot be spread through touching. It is rare for infection to be spread through touching. Every time you touch someone, you will get an infection. Touching is the most common method of spreading infection. If you chose D, touching is the most common method of spreading infection, you are correct. What does the term immunity refer to? Physical characteristics of people who are always sick, ability of the body to easily absorb infection, ability of the body to destroy and resist infection. Physical characteristics of people who are never sick. If you chose C, ability of the body to destroy and resist infection, you are correct. What term refers to the invasion of body tissues by disease-causing pathogens? Inoculation, allergy, motility, infection. If you chose D, infection, you are correct. What is the condition in which the body reacts to injury, irritation, or infection? Inflammation, immunity, integrity, incapacitation. If you chose A, inflammation, you are correct. What is sterilization? Degree of cleansing acquired by rinsing with tap water. Process that completely destroys all microbial life. Process that destroys most but not all microorganisms on a surface. Degree of cleansing acquired by washing one's hands. If you chose B, process that completely destroys all microbial life, you are correct. What is a type of fungus that affects plants or grows on inanimate objects? Pus, mildew, lymph, spirilla. If you chose B, mildew, you are correct. What is true of fourth-degree burns? They are not very serious. They are the most common type of burn. They always require medical attention. They are always fatal. If you chose C, what term refers to a parasitic particle that infects and resides in the cells of biological organisms? Fungus, immunization, bacteria, virus. If you chose D, virus, you are correct. What term refers to various poisonous substances produced by some microorganisms? Quats, toxins, phenols, flagella. If you chose B, toxins, you are correct. What is the common term for tinea versicolor? Migraine, sunspots, athlete's foot, barber's itch. If you chose B, sunspots, you are correct. What is a systemic disease? Disease that affects only one particular body system. Disease that affects the body as a whole. Disease that affects only two particular body systems. Disease that systematically runs its course in 24 hours. If you chose B, disease that affects the body as a whole, you are correct. This concludes this lesson. Make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find t-shirts and hoodies available on our YouTube channel for men and women. Make sure you get one while supplies last. Howard Brown, where learning never stops.